Ravens, Browns. I'm going through what y'all need to know to make some money on this bitch. So we get the picks real quick. We got the Ravens favored by 3 on the road and over under set at 45, which is actually that's dropping pretty quick. That was I think at 48 even just yesterday. But there's weather in this game, up to like 20, 30 mile an hour winds, and it's supposed to be pretty cold too. So I'm going to be really strong on the Ravens in this game, pretty much no question. And then yeah, the money line -3, both are all good with me. And I think the under is bettable too. I'm getting a little bit more worried about it the farther it's dropping. I'll get into why, but I definitely still think it's bettable given the weather situation in this game, and even without it really. But stick around, I'll tell you how and why that's how it go down. So first we got the Ravens offense versus the Browns defense, and here injuries, nothing important really on the Ravens. And on the Browns, Denzel Ward, starting corner, still out. He's been out for 3 weeks in a row. I don't know what the deal with like IR with him is or something like that, but no Denzel Ward again. So run game wise, it's pretty good for the Ravens here. So you talk about their offensive line versus defensive line. Yeah, their offensive line isn't perfect, especially at this point, given the kind of injuries they've gone through and stuff. But they're going to be just fine. And the Browns are actually pretty weak on the interior. They can penetrate versus some teams. They can look really, really good, which are pretty predictable generally. But here isn't necessarily one of them. Both of the Ravens guards are good. Bradley Bozeman and Ben Powers. They've been starting for a while, or like legit. And Sheldon Richardson is a really boomer bust player. And when he's playing guards that he can't beat quickly consistently, that he's going to have issues actually standing up and keeping gaps in the run game. And really, a lot of that same stuff goes for Larry Ogunjobi, and Jordan Elliott, the other Browns, too, rotational defensive tackles. So that's not good. And on the edges, I mean, the Browns' edge run defenders are pretty good, but I don't want to overrate them. They clearly, given the Browns' statistics against the run this year, aren't enough by themselves to prevent anything. And the Ravens tackles are good at run blocking. Orlando Brown, fantastic, and the other tackle, probably Tyree Phillips again, pretty good himself. So while I'm a little bit worried about Myles Garrett, I'm not that worried. And on the second level, I mean, this is where it gets bad for the Browns. Their linebackers still absolutely terrible, especially against the run. And you're going to see that the Ravens are able to consistently make them like the focal point of their running scheme and get them to fuck up basically, and it could get pretty bad. Now the benefit here with the overall run game is that with the weather, I'm sure the Browns are going to be overplaying the run significantly, which does help them, but not the same way that it helps the other side of the ball here. And there's definitely still holes. And I just want to mention too, like I said, with how good the Browns' edge run defenders are, look what happened against the Cowboys. Demarcus Lawrence and Alvin Smith are better run defenders than Myles Garrett and a combination of Olivier Vernon and Adrian Claiborne and Porter Gustin. And the Ravens smoked them on the ground. So their overall run game is going to be good. So then you talk about the pass game. Now here there are definitely issues. I mean, Lamar, well, let's start with the pass rush first. Myles Garrett, significantly better than both the Ravens tackles as far as pass protection goes. And he's going to be good. And on the other side, too, I mean, Adrian Claiborne probably enough to provide some pressure. On the interior, though, Browns, they can be good, like I said, in some games. This one, not necessarily one I expect them to be. Sheldon Richards might flash a couple plays, but they're overall clean. And when you talk about that, then you're probably creating lanes on the side for Lamar to escape through, and there could be some issues. The receivers, though, this is kind of just a pretty bad versus bad matchup. I don't mind the Browns corners even without Denzel Ward, but they're not good enough to shut people down. And the Ravens don't rely or even look at their outside receivers most of the time. And in the slot, I think Devin Duvernay and Marquise Brown are going to be fine versus the Browns. Probably MJ Stewart, I think, who was good in the last game for sure. Versus Adam Humphries, and that was pretty impressive. But I don't know if he has the long speed to keep up with Hollywood. So we'll see. But yeah, then you get to the quarterback, and like I said, Lamar's not. He's going to be fine versus what the Browns do defensively. The win definitely hurts, but the first thing I look at with Lamar is versus the other defense is always the ability of their safeties. For whatever reason, through his career, he's definitely shown that is the indicating factor of his offensive success. Now, the wind does tone that down a little bit, but here the Browns have the worst safeties in the NFL. So that just points to really really positive things for him. And I didn't talk about this in the receivers. Mark Andrews back from COVID, and he's gonna be really good in this game. Now again, his impact is a little bit limited by the wind down the field, but he's gonna be just fine. So the overall pass game is gonna be okay, even despite the wind. I think then maybe that leans into Lamar like running the ball or scrambling, but I think they're gonna be fine. And once they get to the red zone, they're a really good red zone team. Lamar is really good in the red zone. And I have them at a point spread of 20 to 27, which might sound low given the advantages I just mentioned, but the weather is really, really the thing putting that down. So then he gets the Browns offense. And there are gigantic concerns. So I normally really like the Browns, actually, in most matchups. I picked them against the Colts, I picked them against the Raiders, picked them against a bunch of teams. Not here. I'll get into the main reason why, but first, the run game. Offensive line versus defensive line. The Browns side is definitely their offensive line is good, really good. It's one of the best in the NFL for sure. But with the Ravens guys back from COVID, with Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell, their rotation is deep and good on the interior. And the Browns, their run scheme is good for sure, but they do depend a little bit more on interior control than the other zone outside run schemes, 49ers, Rams. And you're going to see that they don't have that in this game. I like the Browns' interior lap, but it's more of a neutral, even slight negative if Calais Campbell's fully healthy, just because the Ravens are so good there. Brandon Williams, fantastic, the best nose tackle in the NFL. But on the edges, it's definitely a lot better there. Browns tackle is really good at run blocking, and the Ravens' edges are just kind of whatever. Matt Judon is a pretty good run defender there, but he's not crazy. He's not Khalil Mack. So there's definitely spots there they can tag. And on the second level, Patrick Queen still has issues. You saw the Cowboys were able to run the ball in their last game, and that's the case here. But their other linebacker spot, especially if it's LJ Fort or CJ Board, well, those guys are pretty reliable veterans. And their safeties help a lot in that regard too. So then you talk about the overall run game. And like I said, so normally I would expect this to be good, but with the weather here, the Ravens can like super overplay the run game of the Browns, like by a gigantic amount. Whereas on the other side, it's a lot harder because of what Lamar can do scrambling and because of like Mark Andrews and stuff. Here, though, the Ravens are really going to be able to overplay. And we've seen in games where the Browns have gigantic advantages in terms of rushing the ball with weather playing a role that they can't really do it. The number one example is the Texans Browns game where they should be able. I mean, Texans have the awful rush defense, and the weather was worse in this game than in that game than it will be in this one. But they still couldn't get that much. They only scored 10 points. Would have been 17, but Nick Chubb, that was the game. He stopped at the 1 yard line to run out the clock. But yeah, I'm worried about that. And the pass game, this is a disaster. Baker Mayfield, I'm probably going to skip a couple steps here because the first thing I want to talk about is Baker Mayfield cannot handle the things that the Ravens and Steelers do defensively. These like complicated zone blitz, moving guys in and out all around. The Ravens do a little bit more man coverage than the Steelers do, a lot more actually. But that type of defense, Baker is terrible against. He showed both the times he played the Ravens and Steelers earlier this year and last year. Now, they did beat the Ravens at one game, but the Ravens were going through injuries, and there was a lot of rushing the ball on a nice day in that one, which is not the case here. With the wind, that also hurts Baker. You've seen every weather game that they've played, he's been terrible. He can't do it. And like I said, I like Baker. I like Baker in a lot of matchups. Not this one. And I'll just mention real quick in terms of pass rush, there he's probably pretty okay. Although I will mention that the Ravens scheme is enough to generate pressure generally, kind of as a baseline. And then the receivers, Jarvis Landry is good, but he's going to be limited by Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and then their other receiver options are just pretty mediocre, especially in this matchup at this point. So I'm worried that you're talking about Baker behind a good offensive line, but with little weapons to throw to dealing with a lot of weather and a lot of scheme that he can't handle. And so I have their overall points by 3 to 10. And yeah, I mean with the weather, I don't see how it gets higher. Now, if it does clear up, if it is nicer, they could get into the teens for sure. But it's not something I would expect at all. So 3 to 10, and yeah, that's why I feel very strongly about the Ravens, because even if the Browns do get a little bit higher, I don't worry nearly as much about the Ravens offensively as I do about the Browns. I'm good with the under, but we'll see how bad the weather actually gets, and if that keeps getting bed down and bed down, you got to be careful about that. But yeah, that is Ravens Browns.